The gleaming hull of the GCS Aegis caught the light of Omega Prime as it rotated slowly in the massive shipyard. Commander Thalia Voss stood at the observation deck, her arms folded across her chest as she watched the technicians scurry across the dreadnought's surface like tiny insects. The Aegis was magnificent, the Confederation's flagship autonomous warship, over 2 kilometers long, armed with the most advanced weapons systems and defensive capabilities ever developed. And yet, it refused to fly. Thalia's comm unit chimed. "Commander Voss," she answered without taking her eyes off the ship. "Commander, we're ready for another attempt." Chief Engineer Nirakalla's voice betrayed a hint of exhaustion. They had been at this for weeks now. "On my way," Thalia replied curtly. She turned from the viewport and strode toward the transit tube that would take her to the Aegis's command center. Her reflection in the polished metal surfaces showed a tall, severe-looking woman with her dark hair pulled back in a regulation knot. The uniform of the Galactic Confederation Space Force fit her perfectly, just as the rules and protocols she followed did. As the transit tube whisked her toward the docking bay, Thalia reviewed the situation. The Aegis was the culmination of decades of technological advancement, a completely autonomous warship that could operate without a crew if necessary. Its artificial intelligence was the most sophisticated ever created, designed to make tactical decisions faster than any organic mind could process. But in every pre-launch trial, the ship's propulsion systems remained stubbornly locked. The transit tube opened into the cavernous main hangar of Omega Station. Technicians and engineers from a dozen different species moved purposefully through the space. Thalia nodded to a group of Novalian engineers, their translucent skin glowing faintly with bioluminescence as they discussed something on their data pads. Chief Engineer Nirakalla waited at the boarding ramp. The Centaurian's 4 arms were each holding different diagnostic tools, and her large, reflective eyes blinked in greeting. "Commander," Nira said, falling into step beside Thalia as they boarded. "We've reset the entire command matrix and reinstalled the base protocols. This should work." Thalia didn't respond. She'd heard similar assurances too many times over the past months. After the 3rd major AI failure in the Confederation fleet last year, the CSS Vigilance targeting systems had locked onto a civilian transport instead of a Krell raider. Her faith in artificial intelligence had been severely shaken. Yet the Confederation continued to push for more automation, more delegation of critical systems to non-organic minds. The bridge of the Aegis was a marvel of engineering, a perfect hemisphere with workstations arranged in concentric circles around the central command chair. Holograms flickered at each station, displaying system status and diagnostics. A skeleton crew of engineers manned the stations, though in theory, the ship could operate with just a single officer giving commands. Thalia took her position at the command chair. "Begin pre-launch sequence," she ordered. "Initiating pre-launch diagnostics," replied the ship's AI, its voice a perfectly modulated gender-neutral tone. "Life support, nominal. Defensive systems, nominal. Navigation systems, nominal. Weapons systems, nominal." So far, so good. Thalia exchanged a hopeful glance with Nira. "Propulsion systems. Checking. Checking. Error detected. Pilot genetic mismatch. Propulsion lockout engaged." Thalia slammed her fist against the armrest. "What does that even mean? There is no pilot. The ship is autonomous." Nira was already at the engineering station, fingers flying across the holographic interface. "I don't understand. This subroutine wasn't in the system yesterday. It's as if it just appeared." "Nothing just appears in a closed system, Chief," Thalia said, her voice tight with frustration. "Find out what's happening. Now." "Commander," said the communications officer, a young Arcturian named Lev. "Admiral Wren is requesting an update on the launch preparations." Thalia suppressed a grimace. Admiral Wren Solis was not known for his patience. "Put him through." The holographic display above the central console flickered, and the stern face of Admiral Wren appeared. His silver-gray skin was typical of Proximans, and the cranial ridges that framed his face pulsed slightly with agitation. "Commander Voss, I expected to be watching the Aegis's maiden voyage by now. Instead, I hear we're experiencing more delays. Thalia straightened her spine. Admiral, we've encountered an unexpected issue. The ship's AI is refusing to engage propulsion systems due to what it calls a pilot genetic mismatch. We're investigating the cause now. Admiral Wren's eyes narrowed. A what? The Aegis doesn't need a pilot. That's the entire point of the autonomous system. Yes, sir. We're aware. However, it appears that a subroutine has been integrated into the core programming that's requiring something else. The Admiral's cranial ridges darkened, a sign of his deepening displeasure. Commander, the Krell have been pushing at our borders for months. Intelligence suggests they're planning a major offensive. We need the Aegis operational. Yesterday. Understood, sir. We're doing everything we can. Do more. The Admiral's image disappeared. Thalia turned back to Nira. Well? The chief engineer looked up from her station, her expression troubled. Commander, I've isolated the subroutine. It's buried deep in the core programming, and well, it's not like anything I've seen before. It appears to be requiring a specific genetic signature before it will allow propulsion systems to engage. What kind of genetic signature? Nira hesitated. Human, Commander. It's requiring a human DNA signature. Thalia stared at her. Human? But that makes no sense. Humans are barely part of the Confederation. They've only had interstellar capability for 50 years. I know, Commander. But the code is quite specific, and it's locked into the core protocols. We can't remove it without a complete rebuild of the AI, which would take months. Thalia sank back into the command chair, her mind racing. The Krell wouldn't wait months. If intelligence was correct, their offensive could begin any day now. The Outer Rim colonies would be defenseless without the Aegis. Who designed this system? Telex Industries, right? Yes, Commander. But the lead architect was Sovan Jar. He's Aldebaranian, not human. Get him on the comm, now. 10 minutes later, the confused face of Sovan Jar appeared on the holographic display. The Aldebaranian's tendrilled head fronds quivered slightly, a sign of anxiety in his species. Commander Voss, I assure you I know nothing about this. Human requirement. The Aegis was designed to be fully autonomous. Yet here we are, Thalia said coldly. Your ship won't fly without a human in the pilot's chair. That's impossible, Jar insisted. The design specifications were clear. There isn't even a traditional pilot station on the bridge. Nira spoke up. The command chair interfaces directly with navigation and propulsion. It could function as a pilot station. Jar's fronds drooped. There must be some mistake. Let me review the code again. Perhaps there's a workaround. We don't have time for that, Thalia said. The Krell won't wait while we debug your ship. Was anyone else involved in the core programming? Anyone who might have inserted this subroutine? Well, there was Project Wildcard, but that was just theoretical research. It was never implemented. Thalia leaned forward. What's Project Wildcard? Jar's fronds flattened against his head, a sign of extreme discomfort. It was a classified initiative. I shouldn't. This is a military emergency. Dr. Jar. Thalia interrupted. Omega Station and potentially the entire Outer Rim are at risk. Classification protocols are superseded. Jar sighed. A whistling sound through his breathing slits. Project Wildcard was an attempt to introduce unpredictability into our combat systems. The Krell have become too good at anticipating our tactics, our strategies. Their pattern recognition capabilities outmatch our own. Wildcard was meant to be the solution, a way to introduce truly random, unpredictable elements into our decision-making processes. And this involves humans how? Humans are unusual among Confederation species. Their neural pathways don't follow the same logical structures as most sentient beings. They make intuitive leaps, irrational decisions that somehow work out. They're chaotic, unpredictable. Jar's fronds twitched. Some researchers theorize that this unpredictability could be our advantage against the Krell. Thalia frowned. So someone decided to lock the most advanced warship in the Confederation fleet to human neural patterns without telling anyone. It appears that way, Commander, but I swear it wasn't me. I need a list of everyone involved in Project Wildcard, and I need it now. After Jar's image disappeared, Thalia turned to Nira. How long would it take to hack through this subroutine? Nira's reflective eyes blinked slowly. Weeks at best, Commander. It's integrated into the core protocols. Attempting to bypass it could trigger security measures that might permanently damage the AI. Thalia stood up. Decision made. Then we need a human. The Confederation Embassy on Earth was a towering spire in the middle of what had once been called Geneva. Earth had only recently been granted provisional membership in the Galactic Confederation, and relations were still strained. Humans were viewed by many Confederation species as primitive, impulsive, and potentially dangerous. Ambassador Krell, no relation to the hostile alien species, a fact he had to explain with tiresome regularity, studied the communique from Omega Station with growing concern. The Confederation needed a human pilot. For their most advanced warship, it smelled like a trap, or at the very least, a potential diplomatic nightmare. But the message had come directly from Admiral Ren Solis, whose authority extended across the entire Confederation military. This wasn't a request that could be ignored. With a sigh, Ambassador Krell activated his comm unit. Get me the Secretary of Defense. 24 hours later, Captain Marcus Reyes stood in the reception area of the Confederation Embassy, trying not to look as uncomfortable as he felt. His dress uniform, adorned with the insignia of the United Earth Space Force, felt stiff and constraining. Around him, a variety of alien species moved through the embassy, some recognizable, others completely foreign to his experience. A tall, blue-skinned Arcturian approached him. Captain Reyes, I am Lev Taro, diplomatic attaché. The ambassador will see you now. Marcus followed Lev through the gleaming corridors of the embassy. The architecture was all smooth curves and soft light, a stark contrast to the utilitarian design of Earth's military installations. Ambassador Krell was waiting in a small conference room, along with a holographic projection of Admiral Ren Solis. The ambassador, a portly man with a neatly trimmed beard, nodded in greeting. Captain Reyes, thank you for coming on such short notice. I believe you've been briefed on the situation? Marcus nodded. Yes, sir. The Confederation needs a human pilot for some kind of experimental warship. I'm still unclear on the details. Admiral Ren's hologram flickered. The details, Captain, are largely classified. What you need to know is that the GCS Aegis, our most advanced autonomous warship, has a unique requirement. It needs a human presence to activate its propulsion systems. With all due respect, Admiral, I'm a test pilot, not a diplomat. Why me? You're not just any test pilot, Ambassador Krell said. You're the best Earth has. Your record with experimental craft is unmatched. And more importantly, you're already cleared for top-secret operations. Marcus studied the Admiral's hologram. The Proximan's expression was unreadable to human eyes, but his rigid posture suggested tension. Is there something you're not telling me? The Admiral's cranial ridges pulsed. There is a great deal I'm not telling you, Captain. But know this. The safety of millions of Confederation citizens may depend on your ability to pilot the Aegis. The Krell are massing at our borders. Intelligence suggests an attack is imminent. Marcus had heard of the Krell. Of course, everyone on Earth had. The aggressive species had been the Confederation's primary adversary for decades. Earth's location, far from the contested borders, had kept humans largely out of the conflict thus far. When do I leave? Immediately, the ambassador said. A Confederation cruiser is waiting to take you to Omega Station. The journey to Omega Station took 3 days. Even with the Confederation cruiser's advanced propulsion system, Marcus spent most of that time studying the limited information he'd been given about the Aegis. The ship's specifications were impressive, nearly 2 kilometers long. Armed with energy weapons that could vaporize a small moon, defensive shields that could withstand the force of a nova. But the information about its control systems was frustratingly vague. When the cruiser finally dropped out of hyperspace near Omega Station, Marcus stood at the viewport, taking in the massive orbital facility. Dozens of ships docked at its many arms, and the huge central hub glowed with artificial light. Beyond it, he could see the massive form of the Aegis, its sleek hull reflecting the light of the nearby star. Commander Thalia Voss was waiting at the docking bay when Marcus disembarked. Her expression was neutral, but Marcus could sense her disapproval. He was used to it. Despite Earth's provisional membership in the Confederation, many species still viewed humans with suspicion or condescension. "Captain Reyes," she said, her tone formal. "Welcome to Omega Station. I'm Commander Voss, Executive Officer of the Aegis." Marcus saluted crisply. "Commander, thank you for the welcome." Thalia's eyes narrowed slightly at the unfamiliar human gesture, but she nodded in acknowledgement. "We're on a tight schedule. The Aegis needs to be operational as soon as possible. Follow me." As they moved through the station, Marcus noted the variety of species working alongside each other. Novalians with their glowing skin, Arcturians with their blue complexions, Centaurians with their 4 arms, and many others he couldn't identify. "Commander," he said, matching her brisk pace, "I'd appreciate some more information about what I'm supposed to do here. I've piloted a lot of experimental craft, but never anything like the Aegis." Thalia didn't slow down. "The Aegis is an autonomous warship, Captain. It doesn't need a pilot, or it shouldn't. But for reasons we're still investigating, it's refusing to engage its propulsion systems without a human presence at the command station. And you're sure I can fix this problem?" Now Thalia did pause, turning to face him directly. "No, Captain, I'm not sure. But we're out of options. The Krell are massing for an attack, and the Aegis is our best defense. If sitting you in the command chair gets this ship moving, then that's what we'll do." Before Marcus could respond, an alarm blared through the station. Red lights flashed in the corridor. "Status report," Thalia barked into her comm unit. "Commander," came a tense voice. "Long-range sensors have detected Krell vessels entering the system. 5 battle cruisers, ETA to Omega orbit, 6 hours. Thalia's expression hardened. "So much for our timeline. Captain, we need to get to the Aegis now." They ran the rest of the way to the boarding dock. Chief Engineer Nirakala was waiting for them, all 4 of her arms gesturing urgently. "Commander, we've prepped the ship for immediate launch, but the propulsion lockout is still in place." "This is Captain Reyes," Thalia said, gesturing to Marcus. "He's our pilot." Nira's large eyes blinked rapidly as she looked Marcus up and down. "A human. Fascinating. I've never worked with one before." "First time for everything," Marcus said with a tight smile. They boarded the Aegis quickly, moving through its vast corridors toward the bridge. The ship was a marvel of engineering, with smooth, flowing lines and advanced technology everywhere Marcus looked. "The command chair is at the center of the bridge," Thalia explained as they hurried along. "In theory, it can control all ship functions, though we normally operate with a full bridge crew." "In theory." "The Aegis has never actually flown, Captain. This will be its maiden voyage, straight into combat." Marcus absorbed this with a grim nod. It wouldn't be the first time he'd piloted an untested craft into a dangerous situation, but the stakes had never been this high. The bridge was a hive of activity when they arrived. Officers of various species worked at their stations, preparing for launch. All eyes turned to Marcus as he entered. "This is Captain Marcus Reyes," Thalia announced. "He will be assisting with the propulsion issue." Marcus could feel the mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and hope in the gazes that followed him as he approached the command chair. It was larger than a human-designed seat, clearly meant to accommodate various Confederation species. As he settled into it, the material seemed to shift slightly, conforming to his body. "Now what?" he asked. Nira stepped forward, a diagnostic tool in one of her hands. "The AI should detect your presence and, if our theory is correct, release the propulsion lockout." Marcus placed his hands on the armrests. Nothing happened. Maybe it needs more direct contact, Nira suggested. There are neural interface points on the headrest. Marcus leaned back, allowing his head to rest against the chair. Immediately, he felt a tingling sensation at the base of his skull. Genetic signature detected, announced the ship's AI. DNA analysis confirms, human physiology, neural interface established. The bridge lighting shifted, brightening slightly, and holographic displays sprang to life around the command chair. Propulsion systems unlocked, awaiting pilot command. A collective sigh of relief echoed through the bridge. Thalia stepped forward, her expression a mixture of relief and lingering skepticism. It worked, she said. Captain Reyes, the ship is ready for your commands. Marcus frowned at the holographic displays surrounding him. They were unlike any control system he'd ever used. I don't know how to fly this thing. The interface is completely foreign to me. Nira approached, studying the displays. The neural interface should translate your intentions into commands the ship can understand. Just think about what you want the ship to do. Marcus closed his eyes, focusing on the sensation of the neural link. He could feel the ship around him, a vast, complex organism of metal and energy. He thought about moving forward, disengaging from the docking clamps, firing up the main engines. Docking clamps releasing, reported an officer at the operations station. Main engines coming online. Thalia watched in astonishment as the ship responded to Marcus's unspoken commands. It's working, she murmured. Commander, called the communications officer. Admiral Wren is hailing us. Put him through. Admiral Wren's face appeared on the main view screen. Commander Voss, I see the Aegis is finally operational. Excellent timing. The Krell battle cruisers have accelerated. They'll reach Omega in 3 hours. We're preparing to intercept, Admiral. The rest of the fleet is still 2 hours out. The Aegis will have to hold them off until reinforcements arrive. Understood, sir. As the Admiral's image disappeared, Thalia turned to Marcus. Can you handle this? We're talking about engaging 5 Krell battle cruisers with an untested ship. Marcus's hands tightened on the armrests. I've flown worse odds. It wasn't entirely true, but the confidence in his voice seemed to reassure the bridge crew. Navigator, plot an intercept course. Thalia ordered. Tactical. Prepare all weapons systems. Let's see what this ship can really do. The Aegis moved away from Omega Station with surprising grace for a vessel of its size. Marcus could feel the power of the engines through the neural link, the vast energies controlled by his thoughts. It was exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. As they cleared the station's defensive perimeter, Marcus accelerated the ship to full sublight speed. The stars blurred slightly on the view screen as the Aegis hurtled toward its rendezvous with the Krell fleet. Time to intercept? Thalia asked. 45 minutes at current speed, reported the navigator. Marcus studied the tactical display. 5 Krell battle cruisers against 1 untested Confederation dreadnought. The odds were not good, even with the Aegis's advanced systems. Tell me about the Krell, he said to Thalia. What are their weaknesses? Thalia joined him at the command chair. They're highly methodical. Their battle strategies rely on precise formations and coordinated attacks. They adapt quickly to standard tactics, but they struggle with unpredictability. Unpredictability, Marcus repeated, remembering what he'd been told about Project Wildcard. That's why they wanted a human pilot. Apparently. Then let's give them what they're afraid of. Marcus closed his eyes, connecting more deeply with the ship's systems. Through the neural link, he could access the tactical database, studying Krell battle formations and strategies. I have an idea, he said after a few minutes. But it's risky. Thalia's expression was guarded. What kind of risk? We're going to use Omega Prime. The gas giant? For what? A slingshot maneuver. If we can get the Krell to follow us into the upper atmosphere, we can use the gravitational pull to accelerate beyond their capacity to follow, then loop back and hit them from behind. Thalia's eyes widened. That's insane. The pressure at that altitude would strain even the Aegis's hull. And the radiation belts around Omega Prime are notorious. Exactly. The Krell would never expect it because no sane pilot would attempt it. Marcus grinned. Good thing I'm not entirely sane. Before Thalia could object further, the tactical officer called out, Commander, Krell vessels have changed course. They're heading directly for Omega Station, bypassing our position. They must have detected us and decided to go for the station instead. Thalia said grimly, Thousands of civilians are there. Marcus's expression hardened. Change of plans. We need to get back to the station before they do. He closed his eyes, interfacing with the navigation systems. There's a subspace corridor near here, isn't there? A natural phenomenon the Confederation uses for quick jumps? Thalia nodded slowly. Yes, but it's unstable. We don't use it for ships this size. We do today. Marcus redirected the ship, accelerating toward the coordinates he'd pulled from the navigation database. Captain, I must advise against this, Thalia said firmly. The corridor is not rated for a vessel of the Aegis's mass. Noted, Commander. But it's our only chance to beat the Krell back to Omega. Marcus could feel the ship responding to his commands, the engines pushing to maximum output. Sometimes you have to break the rules to win. The subspace corridor appeared on the view screen as a subtle distortion in the fabric of space. Marcus guided the Aegis directly toward it, ignoring the warning alerts that flashed across the holographic displays. All hands, brace for turbulence, Thalia announced, recognizing that Marcus would not be dissuaded. The Aegis plunged into the corridor, and immediately the ship began to shudder violently. Warning sirens blared as the structural integrity field strained to hold the massive vessel together. Hull stress at 87% of maximum tolerance, reported an engineer. 89%, 92%. Marcus gritted his teeth, focusing all his concentration on maintaining their course through the unstable corridor. He could feel the ship's pain through the neural link, the strain on its systems. Just a little more, he muttered. Hold together. With a final violent shudder, the Aegis burst out of the corridor, directly in the path of the approaching Krell fleet. Weapons hot, Thalia commanded. Target the lead vessel. The Aegis's weapons systems came to life, energy building in its massive cannons. On the view screen, the 5 Krell battle cruisers were visible now, their distinctive angular hulls bristling with weapons. Fire, Thalia ordered. The Aegis unleashed its primary weapons, beams of concentrated energy that lanced across space toward the lead Krell vessel. The first shot struck the cruiser's shields, which flared brilliantly but held. Again, Marcus called, already maneuvering the Aegis into a better firing position. The second volley struck home, overwhelming the cruiser's shields and tearing into its hull. Secondary explosions blossomed along the Krell vessel's flank. But the other 4 cruisers were responding now, breaking formation to surround the Aegis. Energy weapons and missiles converged on the Confederation dreadnought from multiple directions. Evasive action, Thalia commanded. Marcus was already on it, guiding the Aegis through a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. The neural link allowed him to feel the ship's movements as if it were his own body, anticipating and countering the Krell attacks with uncanny precision. Most of the enemy fire missed, but several hits landed, shaking the bridge violently. Shields at 82%, reported the tactical officer. Minor damage to sections 14 through 17. We can't take on all 5 at once, Thalia said. We need to split them up. Marcus nodded, already formulating a plan. I'm going to take us toward Omega Prime. Let's see if they'll follow. He banked the Aegis sharply, accelerating toward the massive gas giant that dominated this region of space. As he'd hoped, 3 of the Krell cruisers broke off to pursue, while the other 2 continued toward Omega Station. Commander, Marcus said, take control of the weapons systems. I need to focus on flying. Thalia moved to the tactical station, relieving the officer there. What's your plan, Captain? I'm going to take us into the upper atmosphere. The radiation will interfere with their targeting systems, and the pressure will slow them down more than it does us. The Aegis's hull is stronger. And then? Marcus grinned. Then we do something they'll never expect. The Aegis plunged toward Omega Prime, the three Krell cruisers in hot pursuit. The gas giant's swirling storms and vibrant colors grew larger on the view screen. Entering the upper atmosphere in 10 seconds, announced the navigator, tension evident in her voice. All hands secure for atmospheric entry. Thalia ordered. Reinforce structural integrity fields. The Aegis shuddered as it hit the outer layers of Omega Prime's atmosphere. Friction caused the shields to glow brightly, and turbulence rocked the massive ship. Behind them, the Krell cruisers followed, their own shields flaring as they entered the atmosphere. Hull temperature rising, reported an engineer. Shields at 75% and dropping. The Krell ships are experiencing similar stress. Thalia observed, watching the tactical display. Their shields are weakening faster than ours. Marcus nodded, sweat beading on his forehead as he concentrated on keeping the Aegis stable in the turbulent atmosphere. Get ready on weapons. I'm going to pull a maneuver that should give you a clean shot at all three. What kind of maneuver? Instead of answering, Marcus drove the Aegis deeper into the atmosphere, where the pressure and heat intensified. The ship groaned in protest, but held together. The Krell followed, apparently unwilling to abandon their pursuit. Now, Marcus called, suddenly reversing the Aegis's direction. The inertial dampeners strained to compensate, and everyone on the bridge was thrown against their restraints. The maneuver caught the Krell by surprise. As they tried to adjust their course to match the Aegis's sudden reversal, their formation broke apart, leaving them vulnerable. Fire everything we've got, Thalia commanded. The Aegis unleashed its full arsenal, energy weapons and missiles streaking toward the disorganized Krell cruisers. Two of the vessels took direct hits to their engines, sending them tumbling deeper into Omega Prime's atmosphere, where the pressure would eventually crush them. The third managed to evade the worst of the barrage but was still heavily damaged. It turned away, attempting to escape back to space. One's getting away, Thalia noted. Not for long. Marcus pushed the Aegis after the fleeing cruiser, ignoring the warning alerts that continued to flash across his display. The neural link allowed him to feel the ship's systems at a fundamental level, pushing them to their limits without crossing into catastrophic failure. The Aegis caught up to the damaged Krell vessel just as it was breaking free of Omega Prime's atmosphere. A final volley of weapons fire tore through the cruiser's weakened shields and ruptured its hull. The Krell ship exploded in a spectacular burst of energy. 3 down, Marcus said, breathing heavily from the mental exertion of controlling the ship through such extreme maneuvers. 2 to go. Thalia returned to his side, her expression a mixture of astonishment and newfound respect. That was unconventional. That's what you get with a human pilot. Marcus replied with a tired smile. Now let's save your station. The Aegis accelerated away from Omega Prime, racing back toward the station where the remaining 2 Krell cruisers would now be engaging the defensive systems. Status of the station? Thalia asked the communications officer. They're under heavy attack, Commander. Defensive shields are at 40% and failing. The Krell are targeting the reactor core. Marcus pushed the Aegis to maximum speed, the engines straining against their safety limits. How long until we're in weapons range? 3 minutes at current speed, replied the navigator. Too long, Marcus muttered. He closed his eyes, delving deeper into the ship's systems through the neural link. There had to be a way to get more speed, to push beyond the stated limitations. And then he found it, a possibility the ship's designers had likely never considered. The Aegis's main weapons drew power from a massive energy reservoir. If he rerouted that power to the engines for a brief burst... Hold on, he warned. This might get rough. Before anyone could question him, Marcus executed the power transfer. The lights on the bridge dimmed momentarily, and then the Aegis leapt forward with a sudden acceleration that pushed everyone back into their seats, despite the inertial dampeners. What did you do? Thalia demanded. Borrowed power from the weapons capacitors. We'll have to recharge before we can fire again, but we'll get to the station a lot faster. The stars blurred on the view screen as the Aegis hurtled toward Omega Station at a velocity that exceeded its design specifications. In less than a minute, they could see the station and the two Krell cruisers that were systematically destroying its defensive systems. Weapons status, Marcus asked as he cut the extra power to the engines, slowing their approach. Capacitors recharging, Thalia reported. We'll have partial weapons capability in 20 seconds. The station won't last that long, said the tactical officer, pointing to the view screen where one of the Krell cruisers was positioning itself for what appeared to be a killing blow to the station's central hub. Marcus made a split-second decision. Then we'll have to use something else. Brace for impact. He drove the Aegis directly toward the nearest Krell cruiser, on a collision course that would ram the dreadnought's reinforced bow into the enemy vessel's flank. Captain, Thalia shouted, you'll damage the Aegis. Better than losing the station, Marcus replied grimly, his hands tightening on the armrests as he guided the massive ship toward its target. The Krell cruiser detected their approach too late. It tried to veer away, but the Aegis was moving too fast. The impact was tremendous, shaking the Confederation dreadnought to its core. Alarms blared throughout the ship as systems were damaged or knocked offline. But the effect on the Krell cruiser was far worse. The Aegis's reinforced bow tore through the enemy vessel's hull, rupturing its power core. The Krell ship broke apart in a series of explosions, debris scattering across space. Damage report, Thalia called out over the alarms. Hull breach in sections 23 through 27, reported an engineer. Emergency force fields are holding. Primary weapons systems offline. Propulsion at 60% capacity. And the station? Still intact, Commander. But the second Krell cruiser is continuing its attack. Marcus shook his head to clear it. The impact had momentarily disrupted the neural link, giving him a splitting headache. But he could still feel the ship, still control its movements. Secondary weapons are still operational, he noted through gritted teeth. And we have maneuvering thrusters. You're not seriously considering engaging the last cruiser in this condition? Thalia asked incredulously. Do we have a choice? Before Thalia could respond, the communications officer called out. Commander, Confederation fleet dropping out of hyperspace, 3 dreadnoughts and their escort vessels. Relief washed over Thalia's face. Just in time, the view screen showed the arrival of the Confederation reinforcements, their weapons already targeting the remaining Krell cruiser. Outmatched. The enemy vessel turned and fled, jumping to hyperspace before the fleet could engage. The Admiral is hailing us, reported the communications officer. Admiral Wren's face appeared on the view screen, his expression a mixture of relief and astonishment. Commander Voss, Captain Reyes. It appears we arrived just in time to miss all the action. The station reports that you single-handedly engaged 5 Krell battle cruisers and destroyed 4 of them? The Aegis performed admirably. Admiral, Thalia replied formally, as did Captain Reyes. The Admiral's cranial ridges pulsed with what might have been approval. I look forward to your full report, Commander. For now, dock at the station for repairs. The fleet will secure the system. As the Admiral's image disappeared, Marcus slumped back in the command chair, the adrenaline that had sustained him beginning to ebb. That, he said with a weak smile, was one hell of a maiden voyage. Thalia regarded him with a newfound respect. Indeed it was, Captain. Indeed it was. The debriefing took place in Admiral Wren's conference room aboard Omega Station, 2 days after the battle. The Aegis was undergoing repairs in the main shipyard, its damaged hull a testament to the fierce engagement with the Krell. Present at the meeting were Admiral Wren, Commander Thalia, Captain Marcus, Chief Engineer Nira, and a holographic projection of Sovan Jar. Also in attendance was a severe-looking Talaxian woman introduced as Dr. Alara Vex, the lead researcher on Project Wildcard. Let me see if I understand this correctly. Admiral Wren said, his cranial ridges darkening with displeasure. Telax Industries deliberately incorporated this human pilot requirement into the Aegis without informing Confederation Command. Dr. Vex's expression remained impassive. Project Wildcard was classified at the highest levels, Admiral. The decision to implement the Human Interface Protocol was made by the Special Weapons Directorate, without consulting the military officers who would actually be using the ship, Thalia pointed out, her tone sharp. The effectiveness of the protocol depended on genuine, unplanned human interaction with the ship's systems. Dr. Vex replied, if Captain Reyes had been thoroughly briefed on the capabilities and limitations of the neural interface, his responses would have been more predictable, more like our own. Marcus leaned forward. So you're saying you needed me to be ignorant of the system's full capabilities to maximize unpredictability? Precisely, Captain. And the results speak for themselves. Your unorthodox tactics, rerouting power from weapons capacitors to engines, using the Aegis itself as a ramming weapon, these are strategies that would never have been employed by a Confederation officer trained in our tactical doctrines. They're also strategies that nearly got us all killed, Thalia said. But they worked, Marcus pointed out quietly. The Krell weren't expecting them. That's the whole point, isn't it? To do the unexpected. Admiral Wren studied Marcus thoughtfully. Captain Reyes is correct. The Krell have become too adept at predicting our standard tactics. Their pattern recognition capabilities are formidable, but they struggle to counter the Aegis under human control. This still doesn't excuse the lack of transparency, Thalia insisted. We wasted weeks trying to diagnose a malfunction that was actually an intentional design feature. Your concerns are noted, Commander, Admiral Wren said, and rest assured, there will be a full investigation into Telax Industries' decision-making process. Dr. Vex seemed unperturbed by this threat. You may investigate all you wish, Admiral. The fact remains that Project Wildcard has proven its worth. The Aegis, with Captain Reyes at the helm, destroyed 4 Krell battle cruisers and saved Omega Station. I call that a success. What happens now? Marcus asked. Do you need me to keep piloting the Aegis? Or are there other ships with this feature? Admiral Wren and Dr. Vex exchanged glances. The Aegis is currently the only vessel with the Human Interface Protocol fully implemented, Dr. Vex admitted. But based on today's results, the Special Weapons Directorate will be recommending its installation in all new Confederation capital ships. Thalia looked alarmed. You're suggesting we need a human pilot for every major warship in the fleet? Not necessarily a pilot, Dr. Vex clarified. The neural interface could be configured for other positions, tactical, engineering, even command. The key is introducing human unpredictability into our decision-making processes. Admiral Wren nodded slowly. It would require a significant shift in our approach. Humans would need to be integrated into the Confederation military structure at a much higher level than currently planned. And it would require Earth's full membership in the Confederation. Marcus added, not just provisional status. That decision lies with the Confederation Council, Admiral Wren said. But I believe today's events will weigh heavily in their deliberations. 1 week later, Marcus stood before the Confederation Council in the Grand Chamber at the heart of Omega Station. The council consisted of representatives from all 27 full-member species, seated in a semicircle on raised platforms. At the center sat the council speaker, a venerable Novalian whose glowing skin had dimmed with age. Behind Marcus stood Commander Thalia, Admiral Wren, and a small delegation from Earth, including Ambassador Krell. Captain Marcus Reyes, intoned the council speaker, her voice amplified to fill the chamber. You stand before the Confederation Council as the first human to pilot a Confederation warship in combat. Your actions have saved countless lives and demonstrated the potential value of human integration into our military structure. Marcus stood at attention, trying not to fidget under the scrutiny of so many alien eyes. The Council has reviewed Admiral Wren's report on the Battle of Omega Station, as well as the technical data on Project Wildcard. We have also considered Ambassador Krell's petition for Earth's advancement from provisional to full membership in the Confederation. The chamber was silent as the council speaker paused, her gaze moving deliberately from one council member to another. It is the decision of this council that Earth be granted accelerated full membership in the Galactic Confederation, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. A murmur ran through the chamber, some approving, some clearly less so. Furthermore, the speaker continued, the Council authorizes the implementation of the Human Interface Protocol in all new Confederation capital ships, pending appropriate oversight and transparency measures. Marcus felt a wave of relief and pride wash over him. Behind him, he could hear Ambassador Krell's quiet exhalation of relief. Captain Reyes. The speaker addressed him directly. The Council extends its gratitude for your service. You are hereby offered a permanent commission in the Confederation Space Force, with the rank of Commander, to serve as the liaison between Earth's military and the Confederation fleet. Marcus blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected this. He glanced back at Thalia, whose expression was unreadable, and then at Admiral Wren, who gave him an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. I am honored, Speaker, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite his racing thoughts. I accept the commission. Then it is settled, the speaker declared. This council is adjourned. As the council members began to disperse, Marcus turned to face Thalia and the Admiral. Commander Reyes, Admiral Wren said, his cranial ridges pulsing with what Marcus had come to recognize as satisfaction. Congratulations on your promotion. Thank you, Admiral, though I'm not sure I've earned it. You earned it by saving my station and my people, the Admiral replied firmly. The rank comes with the responsibility of integrating more human officers into the fleet. We'll need them if we're to implement the Human Interface Protocol widely. Marcus nodded, still trying to absorb the implications of the Council's decision. Thalia stepped forward, extending her hand in the human gesture of congratulation she had obviously studied. Commander Reyes. Marcus took her hand, noting the firmness of her grip. Commander Voss. It seems we'll be working together more in the future. So it seems. A hint of a smile played at the corners of her mouth. Perhaps you can teach some of our pilots those unorthodox maneuvers of yours. I'm not sure they can be taught, Marcus admitted. They were mostly instinct. That's precisely the point, said Admiral Wren. The unpredictability that comes from human intuition, it's what the Krell can't anticipate. Later that evening, after the formal celebrations had concluded, Marcus found Thalia standing alone on an observation deck, looking out at the Aegis as it underwent repairs in the shipyard. Quite a ship, he said, joining her at the viewport. Thalia nodded. The pride of the fleet, even more so now. You don't entirely approve of the Council's decision, do you? Marcus asked directly. Thalia was silent for a moment, considering her response. I believe in order, in protocols, in systems that work consistently and predictably. Your approach is the opposite of that, but effective against the Krell. Yes, she admitted. Effective. She turned to face him directly. I've studied the battle recordings extensively. Your maneuvers, your decisions. They shouldn't have worked. By all logical analysis, they should have resulted in the destruction of the Aegis. But they didn't. No, they didn't. Thalia's expression softened slightly. Perhaps that's the lesson here. That sometimes logic and protocol aren't enough. Sometimes you need something else. Intuition, instinct, the willingness to take a risk. The human element, Thalia acknowledged. It's going to change everything about how the Confederation fights, how we think. Marcus gazed out at the stars beyond the station. Change isn't always bad. No, Thalia agreed quietly. It isn't. They stood in companionable silence for a time, watching as work crews moved around the Aegis, repairing the damage from the battle. Despite the scarred hull and missing sections, the ship still radiated power and potential. You know, Marcus said eventually, I never expected to find myself here, at the edge of known space, serving in an alien fleet. And I never expected to serve alongside a human. Thalia replied, Life is full of surprises. Speaking of surprises, Marcus said, turning to face her, I heard the Aegis is being assigned a permanent crew. a mixed crew of Confederation species and humans. Yes, Admiral Wren informed me this afternoon. And the command team? Thalia's lips curved in a small smile. You're looking at the new captain of the Aegis. Marcus grinned. Congratulations, Captain Voss. Thank you, Commander. I hope you don't mind serving as my executive officer and pilot. The Admiral thought it would be fitting. I wouldn't have it any other way. Thalia's expression grew serious again. The Krell will be back, and next time, they'll be better prepared. They learn quickly. So do we, Marcus replied confidently. And they'll never be able to predict exactly what a human might do in any given situation. That's our advantage. Our advantage, Thalia repeated thoughtfully. Yes, I suppose it is. As they stood together, looking out at the stars and the ship that had brought them together, Marcus reflected on the strange path that had led him here. A test pilot from Earth, now serving as the executive officer of the most advanced warship in the Confederation fleet, facing an enemy that threatened all civilized space. It wasn't what he had expected when he'd answered the ambassador's call a week ago. But as Thalia had said, life was full of surprises. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was adapting to the unexpected. The Aegis had refused to fly until a human sat in the pilot's chair. Now, with humans and Confederation species working together, there would be no stopping it. The Krell were about to learn a painful lesson about the power of unpredictability. Marcus smiled at the thought. He couldn't wait to show them.